Gengar is the original Ghost-type Pokémon, being the only line from Gen 1 with that typing, while also being easily one of the strongest from that time, with great speed and amazing special attack, alongside an immunity to normal, fighting, and ground-type moves. But could he beat every single Pokémon in Fire Red if they had their best competitive moveset? Let's find out! To start off, this is the Gengar that I'll be using. He currently only knows Shadow Ball, Hypnosis, Nightshade, and Confuse Ray. I know it's a bit of a weird moveset, but this is only based around the ones that he learns via level up. I wanted to start using only those just to see how far Gengar could get with that limitation. Now, as for how I'm going to be facing off against each Pokémon, I modified Pokémon Fire Red to turn it into a gauntlet, where each room I go into represents a tier of competitive battling, going from the strongest in Ubers, where there's both Mewtwo and Mew, all the way to the lowest tier that exists right now, which is SU or Sub-Zero used, with Pokémon like Farfetch, Onix, and Parasect. I also added some lower tiers that I personally made to differentiate Pokémon that are even weaker, and what better way to represent that than the first room, which is composed of the weakest of the weakest: Caterpie, Metapod, Weedle, Kakuna, Magikarp, and Ditto. Gengar had no problem against them until he reached the last one, and you probably know why. If you only go by level up moves, the only one Gengar gets that can hit normal type Pokémon is Tree Meter, which not only would need for the opponent to be asleep, but also for Gengar to land a Hypnosis. That is way too much luck, and I am not dealing with that. So here's what I'm going to do. Each time Gengar faces a roadblock, I'm going to be giving him an extra tool that would give him a way of getting out. I don't want to just give him an overpowered move right off the bat, so let's start slow by giving him the Thief TM to replace Nightshade. It might work against me if I steal a Choice Band or something, but it uses his special attack, unlike Shadow Ball, which is physical in this game. Now, this is the part where I would usually tell you how Gengar swept through the early rooms. And with his stats, you would be right to assume that. However, I quickly realized that giving him Thief wasn't going to be enough, as in literally the next room, I almost lost to a Bulbasaur and then got defeated by an Eevee. I thought I could get away with just Thief, but it looks like I was wrong. Because of that, I decided to just swap it and instead go for Sludge Bomb. It gets the stab boost and can hit normal types, but it's also a physical move, showing how the physical special split was one of the best things that happened to Gengar. Anyways, with both Sludge Bomb and Shadow Ball alongside Hypnosis, Gengar was able to easily sweep most of the second room. There was one exception, which was Ekans. He normally wouldn't be that much of an issue, but 2 out of the 3 times that I fought against him, he for some reason got a crit Shadow Punch to OHKO me. I was able to easily win once he didn't get one, but it was kind of funny how it happened twice. One quick note, some Pokemon in this challenge use moves that look slightly off from their competitive sets. That's because I can't freely modify every IV on the trainer, so Hidden Power is irreplicable. I ended up coming up with the solution of replacing those moves with something close in base power, like Razor Leaf instead of Hidden Power Grass or Shadow Punch instead of Hidden Power Ghost. If a moveset looks a bit weird, that's why. As for the third room, once again, we have issues. Gengar ended up having a difficult time defeating 2 opponents that he faced off at the beginning of the room, those being Butterfree and Kabuto. Butterfree for some reason was sometimes outspeeding Gengar. I don't know what was going on there, but that meant that he could put me to sleep before destroying me with super effective Psychics. The solution was to simply put him to sleep first with Hypnosis and then defeat him with 3 Sludge Bombs. Kabuto though was a different story. My Shadow Balls didn't do much to him, while he always went for Rain Dance to get the speed boost from his ability and turned Surf into a 2-shot. I gave it a couple of tries with Hypnosis and Confuse Ray, but that ended up becoming a waiting game, where I was just waiting to get lucky enough so that I could get past it. I really tried to make the set with stab moves work, but I was just forcing Gengar to be something he's not, a physical attacker. So I gave him Thunderbolt to replace Confuse Ray, and that ended up working great for clearing out both Kabuto and the rest of the third room. As for the Sub-Zero used, Zero used, and poorly used rooms, which are the 4th, 5th, and 6th one out of 12, Gengar had no issues destroying those rooms now that he has a move that uses his vastly superior special attack, defeating a total of 79 Pokemon on the way. The only things that happened in between that are worth mentioning were an Onix, a Rhyhorn, and a Graveler that actually got pretty close to defeating me thanks to their high defenses and both a resistance to poison and an immunity to electric, a Salakberry Mankey that got the speed boost and almost defeated me with a Rock Slide thanks to a flinch, a Salakberry Sword Stance Beedrill that did a lot of damage to Gengar even when he was only using Sludge Bomb, a double resisted move, a Magnemite that won only because he got a paralysis against me, but that also hit super hard with Thunderbolt, and a Ponyta that brought Gengar to only 2 HP with a crit Fire Blast. There was one exception though. In the last room of the ones that I mentioned, Dragonair gave me lots of problems. He always started with Thunder Wave, did great damage with Ice Beam, and his ability Shed Skin made using Hypnosis an unreliable strategy. Well, more than it already is, as it gave him the chance to randomly heal the sleep status. I gave it a couple of tries, but then decided that the best thing that I could do to improve my odds was giving Gengar a Lumberry to heal the paralysis. I ended up not needing it though, as on the next attempt I did, Dragonair's Shed Skin never triggered after I put him to sleep, allowing me to just safely spam Sludge Bombs and defeat him. I'll still keep the Lumberry for future fights, but it was a bit anticlimactic how I ended up getting past that fight without the need of using it. Moving on to the 7th room, or the never used one, I immediately gave a news to the Lumberry, as in the first fight, which was against Dugod, he managed to freeze me turn 1 with Ice Beam, and thanks to the Lumberry, I was able to heal it and both put him to sleep and defeat him with Thunderbolt. I wish I could say that I then easily defeated the rest of the room like the last ones, but unfortunately, Gengar is starting to have a really hard time against the Pokemon that are appearing, mostly thanks to his frailty and lack of strong stab moves. Proof of this is how I'm starting to have to rely more and more on Hypnosis to get past some fights, with the best examples of this being both Hitmonchan and Raticate. Both of them easily two-shot Gengar with Rock Slide and Shadow Ball respectively. Meanwhile, Gengar needs to land 3 Thunderbolts to knock them out. Because of that, I needed to use Hypnosis to put them to sleep and get the free turns. This turned out to be more difficult than I thought though, as it took a couple of attempts to get the 60% accurate Hypnosis to land and then allow me to defeat them. I'll have to use the move more in the future to get past fights, so if during the rest of the video you see the restart counter go up and I don't say anything about it, it's most probably because of a missed Hypnosis. On the 8th room, or the rarely used one, things really went downhill for Gengar. Almost every single battle was lost at least once, with a couple being due to Hypnosis, but others just because they were too strong. And also because of Hypnosis missing against them, leading to a massive increase in the number of restarts. Weirdly, the main issue I had was against Fire types and Normal types, with Rapidash and Ninetales doing too much damage with Fire Blast, especially if they could set up the Sun, and with Persian both outspeeding and hitting incredibly hard with Shadow Ball. The other one that gave me trouble was Raichu, but that one was only because of missing Hypnosis multiple times. Because of how much I struggled during the fights, I decided to just keep the last TM that I find useful to Gengar and make his moveset as complete as possible, with the move being Psychic. There's some other moves I could teach him that would certainly help, but they either require a move tutor from another game or messing around with the IVs of Gengar, and I want to hold off on that for as long as possible. Also, I know I'm relying too much on Hypnosis, but the Pokemon that I'm facing off against are just that strong, and Gengar's frailty is really becoming an issue now, and it's only going to get worse once I reach the later rooms. Speaking of, in the 9th room, or the underused room, things got worse, with one of the Pokemon being outright impossible right now. There were as always a couple of restarts due to Hypnosis, but there were 3 outliers. The first one was Electabuzz. He could easily two-shot me with Thunderbolt, outsped, and was a 3-shot with Psychic. The solution would be to simply put him to sleep, but he sometimes went for Substitute to make it impossible to use Hypnosis against him, and he would sometimes wake up before I could defeat him. I gave it a couple of tries, and with some of them ending because he woke up early and prevented Gengar from landing the 3rd hit, I decided to start using the leftovers to give me a better chance. It still took a couple of restarts, but eventually he stayed asleep for long enough and got defeated by my attacks. The second Pokemon was Omastar. Even though he's weak to Thunderbolt, he can take one, set up the rain, and thanks to his ability Swift Swim, outspeed and OHKO Gengar with a boosted Surf. Once again, the solution was Hypnosis, but I just wanted to mention that teaching Gengar Thunder would have also worked. Lastly, and the one that Gengar couldn't defeat, was Kangaskhan. She could easily take a Thunderbolt, maybe even 4 of them, and because she had a Choice Band and Shadow Ball, she had a pretty high chance to OHKO me. Hypnosis is always an option, but there's a problem with that. She has the ability Early Bird, which makes it so that instead of staying asleep for the usual amount of turns, that number gets cut in half. At most, staying asleep for 2 turns. I have some ideas on how to defeat her, but they would need either insane luck or getting a completely different moveset. Because of that, I'm going to come back later and see if I can do it then. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe, as I'm going to be doing this for a lot more Pokemon and that really helps me grow. In the penultimate room before fighting the Uber Pokemon, things continue getting ugly, as the first Pokemon I fight is Alakazam, and he outspeeds and one-shots Gengar with Psychic. There's just nothing to do there. Like, there wasn't a range, a chance to put him to sleep, a crit I could get, nothing. The only thing that I could think of is to try and use the Quick Claw, which has a small chance to give priority to my move and then see if Shadow Ball works. It's a strategy that requires way too much luck. So, like Kangaskhan, I'm leaving it until the end. I wish that was the only roadblock that I face in the room, but there's one more. Tauros. He's basically a stronger version of Kangaskhan, in the sense that he outspeeds, and instead of getting a range with Shadow Ball, he straight up one-shots me. Once again, there's nothing I can do that doesn't require dozens of restarts. So another one goes to the probably impossible to beat list. There were other things that happened that I want to mention before moving on to the penultimate room though. First off, there was Articuno, who took a bit of time, but if he missed a Blizzard, it was an easy 3-shot with Thunderbolt. Then there was Chansey, who was immune to my Shadow Ball and took no damage from Thunderbolt or Psychic. He kept going for Coal Mine and eventually defeated me, but after swapping Psychic for Sludge Bomb, I got an easy one-shot thanks to a crit. Lastly, there were a couple of Pokemon that did massive amounts of damage, but fell thanks to a Hypnosis, like Marowak, Rhydon, and Vaporeon. The overused room was Nets, and this was a surprisingly easy one when compared to the previous ones. There was a bit of a roadblock that I'll address in a bit, but before that, the ones that gave me a bit of trouble but were quickly defeated with the help of Hypnosis were Aerodactyl, Jolteon, Starmie, and Zapdos, with Moltres and Gengar being relatively easy to defeat with only 2 attacks. As for the troublesome Pokemon that I mentioned before, it was Magneton, as he took no damage from my moves while hitting pretty hard with his own Thunderbolts. I was worried that I would have to teach Fire Punch to Gengar, which I can get from a move tutor from Emerald, but I ended up thinking of a more fun solution, which was to teach Gengar Focus Punch. It's usually a pretty useless move, as it needs for the user to not get hit during the turn, but when you combine it with a sleeping move, it becomes a really strong option, even when taking into account Gengar's poor physical attack. The move ended up working great not only for Magneton, but also for Snorlax, who is a pretty bulky Pokemon and has both Curse to raise his attack and Shadow Ball to hit for a lot of damage. For both of them, after putting them to sleep and then landing a couple of Focus Punches, they were defeated, meaning that I could go right now into the Uber's room with both of the broken legendaries in this game. But before that, I want to give one last try to all of the Pokemon that I wasn't able to defeat before. The first one I tried was Kangaskhan, and the strategy that I came up with was so insane. I took Gengar Skill Swap in place of Thunderbolt, and I needed to use the move to replace his ability Early Bird for my Levitate, while just barely surviving a Shadow Ball. I then needed to land a Hypnosis, which would now work like normal and give me the chance to use Focus Punch for a 2-shot. The other two were Alakazam and Tauros, and they both needed the Quick Claw. So it was a bunch of restarts where I was just waiting for the item to activate and give me the priority. Against Alakazam, it took almost 10 restarts, but when I got the activation, Shadow Ball ended up being a one-shot. As for Tauros, I wanted to do something similar as to what I did for Kangaskhan, which was to put him to sleep and then attack. Unfortunately, neither Focus Punch nor Thunderbolt are 2-shots against him, meaning that I would need for both the Quick Claw activation, land the Hypnosis, and hope that Tauros stays asleep for at least 3 turns. I could try and go for Thunder to get more damage done to him, but if I'm honest, all of that requires getting way too much luck. So, while it is statistically possible for it to happen, I'm just going to say that Gengar cannot beat Tauros. To end the run, it's the final two Pokemon, Mewtwo and Mew. I challenged Mew first since he seemed like the easiest one, and unfortunately, my Shadow Ball was a 3-shot against him, while his own Shadow Ball was either a 2-shot or an OHKO if he went for a Sword stance. I tried going for the usual Hypnosis strategy, but it turned out that Mew had a berry equipped to heal it, so I had to land 2 Hypnosis to really put him to sleep. It took me 7 attempts, but I thankfully managed to get the sleep and then 3-shot him with Shadow Ball. I was then about to start the Mewtwo fight, but as I was healing Gengar, I remembered that I had a choice band that I stole using Thief a while back. It made me wonder if that would have worked against Mew, so I restarted to do the fight again, and lo and behold, it turned Shadow Ball into a 2-shot, which easily defeated Mew. Guess it was more simple than I thought. I then went for Mewtwo with the same strategy. He was faster and set up a substitute, but it was easily destroyed. He then went for Coal Mine, which allowed me to hit him this time, and it looked like it was an easy 2-shot. Unexpectedly, however, his Thunder then 1-shot Gengar. It might be a range, so let's keep trying. And if it isn't, well, I'll just have to wait for a crit then. The next attempt, Mewtwo went for Coal Mine at the start, while my Shadow Ball brought him below half HP. He obviously went for Thunder, and the move got Gengar to only 3 HP, which allowed him to land the second Shadow Ball and knock him out. So, can Gengar beat all 151 Pokemon in Fire Red with their competitive moveset? Unfortunately, no. He gets really close at 150, but Tauros is too fast for him, hits really hard with Shadow Ball, and can take multiple hits from Gengar. It's still impressive how he managed to beat almost the entirety of the Kanto Pokédex, but Gengar has some major issues, like his reliance on Hypnosis, a 60% accurate sleeping move, his frailty, which is the reason for his reliance on Hypnosis, and the absence of a physical and special split. Still, even after saying all of that, Gengar had also some great tools that allowed him to defeat almost every Pokemon of the original 151, like a massive speed and special attack, immunity to normal, fighting, and ground type moves, a sleeping move in Hypnosis, even if it can sometimes be frustrating to use, and access to both Psychic and Thunderbolt. So overall, I think it was a pretty good result for a Pokemon that's not a legendary. But anyways, did I miss anything on the video? If you think so, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.